to do a second fire on this leaf. Now then, I want to come in with some antique green and a little bit of chartreuse. So I'm loading the brush full load with antique green and a little side load of the chartreuse. I'm going to come in between some of these veins with a little wedge stroke. This is a wedge stroke. Can you see it up there at the top? That's what I call a wedge. And how far you put the brush down, you can diminish it out to nothing. And then I'm going to use a little bit more black green down here where the other leaf is sitting on top. So I'm putting this dark underneath to set that other one on top. I won't do anything to this in here because that's in shadow. There's no detail in your darkest darks or your lightest lights. All your detail is in your midtones. You can be a high key painter or a low key painter, just not middle key. What that means is you can paint a more light pastel soft painter or a bold painter. But middle key is all the too close in value. So it doesn't, a lot of times, a lot of people will say, well, my painting doesn't look finished. And usually it's because you don't have enough darks and you didn't leave enough lights. So it makes it more all mid-tone. Now I'm going to make that end of that leaf a little bit darker. Now what you can also do is come back, let that paint rest a minute, and then use your cloth and come back to what was there a little bit with a blast of light, just a place or two, not everywhere. And then you need to soften that light so it doesn't look like you just stuck your finger in there. And now I can borrow a little bit color I have on my brush and just make this into a shadow shape of a leaf. Okay, so that's pretty much what I would do on a second fire. So we have a few more minutes, so I can still work on this a little bit more, I think. So sometimes I'm going to use blue green, a little bit of black green, and come up underneath that flower, the main flower, the prima donna, whatever you want to call it, and set it up more and set this one further back. Do you see how also at this stage, if you're a light painter, you could also, and you painted the daisy light, the petals, you can adjust the shape a little bit with that shadow that you're putting behind it. But what you do to one side, you do to the other. You don't want the flower divided in half. So a little bit of that color, the black green and blue green, I'm going to bring over to the other side just a little bit so that the eye moves across the flower. By the way, what I'm teaching you on these daisies with these white flowers, whether it be any white object, white flowers, a polar bear, anything that's white, I like to use pretty much these color combinations. With the exception, if I was, say, doing daisies and strawberries together, that might be a fun object. I haven't done that before. But if I was going to put those two subjects together, on the last fire, I would still do the pink, yellow, and blue. But on the last fire, I would use some washes of yellow red on some of the daisies so you unify the two pieces. Okay, you see now how I've got this one set back and that one on top. Now we're going to go to the third fire. By the way, that fire I would be doing at 017. This is a completed third fire. And on this plate, this is a bigger plate, you can see I even put a shadow daisy or two in the background, which adds a little bit more depth. What you should look at when you're saying, is my painting finished? you should see layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. And the more layers you have, the more overlaps you have, the more depth your painting will have, so it doesn't look flat. And would I leave this with a white background? I would. You don't have to, but I like that white background. This is a little, it's a little piece. You can see by the size of my hand. It's a little bud vase. And this one, I put background on the piece. So I use that blue, green, and yellow in the background here. It kind of makes it, like I said, atmospheric. So this is a second fire that I've done, and it's been fired, and you see the flower that they lighten up, and you can see that the pecan even lightens up. So now then I'm going to do what I would do on a third fire. Sometimes it takes more than 3 fires. Sometimes it takes 4 fires, 5 fires. If you're a very pastel painter, usually it takes you a little longer to get there. But that's okay too. Paint at your pace. Except when you're doing a zoom and then you've got to do it lickety split. So here, again, washes again. Come in, and I'm going to wash now this whole bottom of this flower with blue-green. And I'm going to take that blue-green even onto the leaves themselves. And take that blue-green over there. So everything that's in shadow will have more of this blue-green. This is wash day. Wash day is fun because you can figure out what needs to be put back up into the light and what needs to go recede. Now, on this time, I'm going to be working from down here and up, and I'll do the centers of these flowers last. The next thing, if you want some pink on the edges of your daisy, see, I put pink, I don't know if y'all can see that, on the edges of that flower here. Right here, you can see that pink on the edges, and I think that's pretty. If you decided I wanted a yellow daisy, I don't want to do all these white, before you put the blue, you could just wash that daisy with a yellow color, and it will give you a pastel yellow flower. If I wanted to make these daisies pink, a light pink, it's as easy as washing. This is soft pink. It's as easy as washing soft pink over that flower. But these colors I'm going to be doing again anyway, because it's what I used on the first fire. But if you were to wash the whole thing with pink, you'd have a light pink flower. If you were to wash the whole thing yellow, you would have a light yellow flower. It's just a fun way to do things. Now, what I don't want are these equal in color or size. So I'm going to bring a little pink over here. I call this sharing the love. I'm going to put a little blue over here. And I'm pulling it right out into the background. Now, for those of you who asked about background, this is a stage that you can actually pull this color out into the background. Also, if you look, because I mixed all those colors together, I get a nice gray. And out of that grayed color, I can come in and make some interesting shadow shapes. Think daisy leaf shapes. And when they are, shadow shapes are actually leaves that are in shadow, and they're a lot of times very abstract. Now then, I'm going to come back with the wipe, and I'm going to wipe out some of this light off of that flower to make it stand out. One thing that I find sometimes, if you get too much orange in that center and it's too bright, do you know how you can gray that orange? You can gray that orange by washing some blue over it. But I'm going to put some brighter color now in the center of this. And I like to tap it. Just that tapping also gives it a little texture. Now, remember the shadow color that we used before, but now I'm just going to use this soft pink with a little blue green and no black green in it. And come and just use that color. It makes like a gray, the blue green has green in it. So it grays that pink a little bit, which gives you a nice soft heliotrope color. Going back around behind. Now at this stage, if I want to make this have those little pink edges, I'll take soft rose with a little soft pink, which is soft rose is a little darker, and come in and just tip the edges with, and I'm not going to do every petal. I'm just going to kind of carry it around. And this is painter's choice. If you don't like this, you don't have to do it. If you like it, do it. But sometimes it's like cheesecake. We like it too much and we put too much on. That should be enough for that. Now that soft pink and blue-green mix again in the shadows down here. And because it has that blue-green wash on it, it's going to look darker. Remember that I use cool colors in the shadows and warmer colors in the light. Now I'll come back and lift out a little bit of light out of that a place or two. You know, a lot of times my best paintings are my demo paintings because I'm doing all the stuff that I know I'm supposed to be doing. Also, when you see it on a screen, you can see your values and what's happening here. Now I'm just using a little bit more pink towards the center here and not on the outside edges. It just creates a little bit more interest and a little bit more fun to that flower. Sorry, I was off screen there. Okay, now I'm going to use black, green, and cobalt blue and add some darks. Now, I don't want, and I'm going to wash right over that stem to make it disappear into the background. So how dark can you go? It's up to you. Do you know when a painting's finished? A painting is finished when the last stroke you do would not improve it. And now I want to blend that leaf into that background a little bit more. And when I put darks in, I have to carry the darks over somewhere else and not divide that leaf in half. So I'm going to bring a little bit of that dark while it's still in my brush over to the other side. Now I'm going into some chartreuse out here and also antique green. Chartreuse being a warmer color and it's out away from the shadow. Black, green, cobalt blue down here, poke it in those little holes. Use your brush to make those little strokes. and it helps to walk that dark down into there. Now then up here, I'm going to put a little bit of this color on the bud, a little bit on that bud, a little bit on that leaf. So what I'm doing is carrying that through. Now you see, I have not put that red on these centers yet. That needs to go there. But what this red is also kind of like a shadow. So I'm going to put the darker red here on this one and here on this one because it's away from the light. Rich red is a darker red, and that's what I'm going to use in the shadow up here. Then as I move out of that, I'm going to go into yellow red. A good rule of thumb is to have your color in values, not just use the same color and make it lighter and darker. But when you change value, change color. And that's a very important statement I just gave you. That's a secret I'm sharing with you today. Not really. I teach everybody that, but when you change value, change color. So if you go from dark, you go to a mid-tone, you go to a light, and you change the color doing it, not just by making it lighter or darker or weaker in the color. Okay, so this now has a more finished look. And like I said, you could add some more of these shadows. If I wanted to do I think I have time to do a shadow daisy for you. I'm going to use blue, green, and black green. Now, if I had used black, green, and violet, that would be the color that I would do the shadow daisy in, because this is the color that I'm using for this shadow. So let's see, where can I put one? Let's put one right here. So I'm going to use the blue, green, and black green and start that up underneath this leaf. Now I'm going to take some of that black green out of my brush by just blotting it and putting in more blue green. Then I'm going to take the blue green now and just pull those into shapes of petals. All right, so then we get this daisy looking shape, but I'm also going to pull out some light out of that. One of the things that's a mistake that I see, and I used to do myself, was, oh, there's shadows, and I make them solid. And really, if you start to look in photos, shadows are not solid. They have light, mid-tone, and dark within the shadow. Case in point here. If you look at this shadow, it has different values in that shadow. It's not all the same color, and it's not all the same value. You can see it in this one as well here. Now then, I'm going to pull out light, working towards that center. And I'm going to pull out light in the center. And then I'm going to use a flexible wipeout tool to use it to create these little shapes of stamen. I find the flexible one gives me a little bit more interesting shapes than one that's hard. Now, if I also want one of these petal edges to curl or curve, I'll use this tool, and I use it like, it's more like using a brush. This is one I got from Stephen Hayes years ago. One of one of the giants in our art. But also Hobby Lobby now sells a set of these. They're by Master's Touch, and they have an interesting little shape to them, and it's more flexible like his. So if you don't have his, from those of you who are out of country, if you know somebody that lives in the States, they can get one for you. And see, that also gives a little sparkle to the edge of the flower. Now, I wouldn't just do one of these flowers on this plate, by the way, the shadow shape. I would add more than one. I would have 3 probably if I was going to do those. And then I would come back now with this paper towel. I use Viva paper towel because it's softer, but there's a rough side and a smooth side. So I'm going to use the smooth side. I wrap it around my finger, and this side of it is smooth. I use a little what I call tongue oil. You can call it spit. That way I get all the way back to the white of the porcelain. And I pull back that blast of light again. Remember, there is no detail in your darkest dark, and there's no detail in your lightest light. All your detail is in your midtones, and I think that's why people like to paint midtones. Now then, after I did all of that shadow around those centers, I need to come back and lift back up this center, and I come in and I pop up all of those little parts of that center that are overlapping that daisy. See, and that sets that back up on top. Now, if that's too light or too yellow or whatever, you can also come in and shadow those parts with a little bit of pecan. And I just kind of sprinkle a little dots or little shadows here and there. Sometimes less is more. You can make these a little darker down here because it's more in the shadow. So now then, that has a lot more finished look to that piece. If you need to add a little bit more pink in the center of your bud, just use a little soft rose. Say down here, if I wanted this little bud to show up more, I could even use some soft pink and pull out some little petals a little bit better. Say you forgot to put some in one of these, you can always add a little bit and, add a little petal out there. I don't know. Yeah, here on this one, you can see right here, you can see one of the buds that's starting to open. This is a good close up. Where am I? Right there. This is a good close up. I don't know if it's kind of out of focus there, but this is a good close up of what the back of that looks like. It has almost like little scales on the back, very much like a mum, the backs of these daisies. This was taken in Seaside, Oregon, and I would go there in May, and that was when their flowers were blooming. Now I'll show you, that was an outside photo. This is a photo I took in a class where they brought daisies for me to paint from. Do you see how the lighting looks different than that one that was outside? So indoor lighting and outdoor lighting makes a huge difference in what you're working from. I encourage you to go take your own photos when you're painting anything. The reason for that is you cannot paint what you don't understand. And so looking at photos is great, but when you actually see the plant, how it's attached and what's going on, it makes a huge difference. These are really neat because you've got really nice, interesting outs and ins. And say I wanted to change one of these. Maybe I thought that all of those were boring, but this one has nice ins and outs. But say I wanted to change one of these petals at this stage, you still can because they're a light flower. And especially if you're a light painter, you can come in and go, okay, I want this petal to be shorter. And you can bring that dark in, see, and change that shape. Like in here, you could bring it in a little further. So that helps to make that a little bit more of an interesting shape. And it's good to have photo references because you think you know what it looks like, and your brain records the simplest image it can record. It doesn't record all those interesting little shapes that we like to see in paintings. We are shape makers, symbol collectors, and entertainers. That's an Edgar Whitney quote, that he was a very famous watercolor artist. What that means is we entertain you with the shape. And symbol collectors, before we started adding detail to this and all of this interesting shapes and color and shadow, what we had was just a shape of a daisy. That's a symbol. It's like the symbol of a restroom for a man and a woman. Nobody hardly wears skirts anymore, but you know, if it's got a skirt on it, that's the ladies' restroom. So that's a symbol for a lady. This is a symbol for a daisy until we start putting in all of this information. Like this is a symbol of a daisy until I started doing some more lights and darks in it. It was just a flat shape. So I think we're about done. Are there any questions? By the way, this is also 017. The reason I do 017 is the mixing yellows that I get today, a lot of times tend to eat up color. And what happens with that, when it eats up the color, it lightens it. In other words, not really eats it up, but lightens it. So to hold my reds is why I'm firing 017. If you wanted to fire 016, 015, you could, and everything would hold, but you would lose your reds. I'm going to show one quick little thing, and it was a question that was asked on Facebook the other day about rouging. You can change the look of a flower with rouging, and I have this little piece that was broken in an accident. It got something set on it. It's very thin tile that Marcy made for me. But anyway, so here I'm going to rouge some red on on this daisy. Now you can rouge with only iron colors, not with. You can't rouge with blues or pinks. They don't work, but reds work really well. And I'm going to take my finger and I'm going into rich red. And what it is, when I'm rouging, I'm just don't have any oil on my finger at all. It's just the red on my finger. And see, I'm going to pull that onto that flower. And that color will pretty much stay because I don't have oil in my oil, only what was on my palette. So it's a nice color that you can get reflections onto that with. Now, if you use blue, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Let's see. Yeah, this is just the blue, see? But also, it will not stick. It just usually sticks to what's painted. If I do it out here, it starts to separate. But if you've got paint there, it'll stay. And then you can still come back and lift out some light. But my piece that's on Facebook of the mums, I used a rouging technique for it. Now see how that paint just stayed there? Not until I used some spit on my cloth, tung oil, can I lift out any light. But see how pretty that is? So it's a nice way, easy way to put some more color on your flowers.
Cheryl,
All
I
right.
have a question.
Yes.
The third fire on the centers, did you only use the reds for that?
Only use the red. Only use the reds. Only yellow red and rich red on the centers. And the rich red was only used on that one petal, that one area where it was really dark, where it's darker. So yes, I only use the reds, no yellows.
No pecan.
No pecan, just reds. Because I wanted to give them a little more oomph. If you want them a little duller, then you could use pecan.
Okay.
Any other questions? No? Okay. I think most people are muted, but
everyone is muted. If someone has a question, unmute yourself and you can talk to Cheryl and ask her question. But it goes.
We've got just a few minutes left. Yes.
We have a few minutes left. Yes.
Okay.
The speaker view. So as soon as you finished asking the question, be sure and mute yourself again so that someone else can ask.
Okay. You want me to mute myself?
No.
Oh, I didn't think so. Okay.
Okay. So just Frisia, did you have a question?
No, thank you. I only want to say thank you for Cheryl. She's a great teacher, and it would look like it's very simple, I know, but I would try to do. I paint only with close oil, but try, yes.
The closed oil works. I mean, you see that these two paintings, that the second fire and the third fire, I did in an hour. So your oil won't be set up that quickly, or does it set up very quickly?
Yeah.
Patty, did you have a question?
Yes. On your antique green, you say you make it yourself with a leaf green or a grass green. And
yes,
pecan,
it's just a pure green.
True?
Yeah. Excuse me?
You make your antique green with a leaf green or a grass green with pecan?
With pecan.
Okay.
Or you might have one that says ochre, or you might have a color called yellow brown #2. Any of those colors mixed with the antique will make the antique green.
Okay, the grass green and the leaf green, I don't have colors that are called that.
It's just a pure green.
It's just a pure green.
Right.
Okay.
Let me see if I can put that out for you. So I'm going to put it out right here. I'm going to show you really quickly. Okay, so I've got, this is my grass green. I'm going to put it right up here. It's just it may not be pure looking pure on the screen. It looks very dark on mine, but that's just the antique green. And you can, what I call, flavor it like you want to. How much pecan? This is pecan. How much pecan you put in it is up to you. But I put more of the true green in with the antique to make the antique green with the pecan, and I mix those two together. Now, like I say, you can make that more gray if you add more of the pecan, or you can leave it lighter by adding less of the pecan. So the pecan, now I'm going to add a little bit more. The pecan makes it darker.
So your true green is kind of a dark true green.
No, right? It's not. It's not dark. It looks dark on the screen, but it's not dark. Okay. It's a mid-value true green. Mid-value, not dark. Your pecan or your ochre or your yellow brown too is the darker of that color family. But with the antique green, that I'm making, the grass green is the lighter, is the mid-value. So I go from chartreuse to grass green to antique green, and black green. Those are my greens that I have, that I use. But see, that makes a nice, I don't know, can you see that? take a little bit of it off. It makes a nice, really lively antique green, not a dead ones. Some of the dead antique greens have too much pecan in them, or they're too dull. And this gives you a nice, true looking green that you see in nature. So learn to make some of your colors instead of buying them.
Is chrome green one of the greens that would be in the middle range?
If it's not, some chrome greens go towards blue. This is just a true green. No, it's not a blue at all. Is your chrome green just a clean green?
Yes.
Okay, yes, that would work.
Does anyone else have a question? Unmute yourself and ask it, please. Okay, well, Cherryl, you did an absolutely fabulous presentation, and you taught us so many new painting methods that we will use to finish up our second and third fire.
Well, thank you. And check us out on the YouTube on this video that she's recording, please, or go to the iPad website.
Yes, it will be.
Thank you.
It will be.
Thank you, ladies. It was so good to see you.
Cheryl.
Thank you,
You're
Cherryl.
welcome.
Thank you.
All
Very
right.
good,
Bye-bye.
very good.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.